Hello, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm Mahnoor, psychologist at LeanDreams Weight Loss.
And I am Brenda Peralta. I am the registered dietitian.
Okay, so just so we're going to talk about managing holiday triggers. So basically, although holiday is a time of celebration, but people do experience a lot of stress, overwhelm, and anxiety. And there are things that may trigger emotions that may be negative. So we're going to talk about managing all of those. Okay. So, some of the common triggers that people experience are related to the family dynamics. It could be some unresolved family issues, some unspoken tensions, or any such emotions. So, in order to deal with that, you can start setting healthy boundaries, which means that you should let the other person know what is acceptable and what is not acceptable for you. You can also practice some exit strategies. By that, I mean you can decide some ways to exit a conversation if it gets really difficult for you to handle. You can maybe say that I need to get some air, or maybe you can excuse yourself to the bathroom. Just any way to get yourself out of that overwhelming situation. And you can also deal with it in a way by visualization. By visualization, I mean that you can imagine a safe space for yourself. It can be a place, a thing, just anything that gives you that calm and comfort. And you can just imagine that whenever you're feeling uncomfortable or overwhelmed. Another important trigger that we should talk about is social comparison and expectations. So it is although present all year round, but specifically during holidays, people do experience a lot of comparison, either to their family members, to their relatives, or either to people on social media. So, a very important thing we can do is a social media detox. Maybe not trying to limit social media usage as much as you can, or maybe set timings for using social media. And then practice gratitude as much as you can. Just be grateful for the things that you do have in your life rather than focusing on the things that you don't. And another trigger, feeling alone or isolated. So you might be away from your family, or maybe there is, maybe you are in among a group of people, but you're feeling emotionally isolated or distant. So for that, you can start creating new traditions, trying out new things that bring out joy, even if these are not the things that you are usually used to doing for holidays. And secondly, reaching out first, which is something a lot of us don't do. And we wait for the other people to really count us in for activities and for really to reach out to us first. But instead of waiting for others, we can start doing things ourselves. Next slide, please. Yes, triggering conversation. So, meeting a lot of people comes with this price. There would be conversations that might be difficult for you to handle, that might be difficult to deal with, like conversations about your personal life, your weight, uh, your profession, your career, anything. So, you can either practice neutral responses to deal with them. Maybe it could look something like I'm focusing on what makes me happy right now, or I'm focusing on my wellness right now, or I would rather not discuss that today, things like that. And by redirecting, I mean, we can do things like shifting the focus onto something that is more neutral or more positive to talk about. Like, let's talk about this, let's talk about that. You can just shift the conversation to a different direction. And emotional eating, although I'm not going to cover a lot about eating, Brenda is the expert here. But what you could do is, since the holiday season is a season of a lot of emotions, stress could come up for a lot of people, and that can lead to emotional eating. So you can practice some mindfulness. A very common method that we use is the halt method. That means you literally just stop before eating and ask yourself whether you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. And lastly, all or nothing thinking. All or nothing thinking could look like putting all your progress out the window just because you missed a workout, or just because you had a fun meal, but that means you should practice flexibility. You should practice acceptance of the fact that you might not have a perfect routine during the holidays, but that doesn't make your progress any lesser. You should continue to focus on being healthier one step at a time and one day at a time. Thank you. Next, please. So, to deal with any kind of emotional triggers or any kind of situation, you have to come up with a coping plan. And a coping plan could look different for every person. What works for one might not work for others. And for that, we need to plan ahead. Just think about what areas do you find difficult to deal with? What areas would you have maybe issues with? So for some people, it could be comparison. For some, it would be family dynamics. So, or any other thing. You have to think of it, and you have to have your basics covered, which is so important. Like eat properly, sleep properly, and make sure to be physically active in one way or the other. I'm not telling you to do a 3 hour workout or so. Just be physically active, because these things, when we don't have these things covered, they do impact our mental well-being to such an extent that you're going to be more triggered and you're going to have relatively more issues as compared to when you're feeling normal and you're feeling good. So, and then lastly, think of three specific actions that you can take for each situation. It could be mindful breathing, it could be reframing your thoughts. By reframing your thoughts, I mean, when a negative thought pops up, you just put that thought and gently reframe it into a more positive thing. And you can also practice gratitude, which is so important because it literally shifts your focus from a negative, uh, from any negative thing in your life to more positive ones. And lastly, rehearse responses that you would be able to come up with in the heat of that situation. Thank you so much. That was all about the coping tips from me. Now, Brenda is going to talk about it.
Thank you, Manur. So we're going to go over some of the best tips for you to go over the holidays. Um, Kind of what Manur was saying, one of the best things that I always recommend for people to doing is either adjusting their goals. It's always okay to adjust them during the holidays. Maybe you're not going to lose as much weight, or maybe you're not going to lose weight, and it's totally fine to just take a step back, think about it, and determine if you really want to lose weight or if your main goal is going to be just maintenance, just making sure that your weight doesn't increase during the holidays. That's totally okay and that's totally acceptable. And the other thing that I usually recommend is making sure that you don't compare yourself with you from the holidays from you without the holidays. So you're not going to be, for example, I'm not going to be the same Brenda during the holidays as I am Brenda that it is not during the holidays. I don't have as many social activities. There's not much food involved. So it's when you compare those things, they're not the same scenarios. And that's when a lot of people may start feeling overwhelmed. They don't feel like they're advancing and they're like, oh, why do this? And then they just leave things aside. One of the best things that you can do is compare yourself from the, for example, Brenda holidays 2024 with the Brenda holidays 2023. That gives you an equal ground, and that's going to help you determine, okay, have I made any improvements? If yes, then perfect, we're going to move forward. Or if no, then take a step back and see why haven't I made changes and what I need to start changing maybe for the next holidays. With that said, there are several nutritional tips that you can also follow. One is the 80-20 rule. So it's basically having 80% of your meals from healthy options and then 20% of those things that maybe you find a little bit more indulgent. One exercise that I always recommend doing is like putting food in a fighting ring. So, for example, you know that in fighting rings, you have two contenders, they fight, and then they start escalating until you have like the top contenders. The same applies with food. For example, mashed potatoes versus the pie. If you want, and the pie is something that you only have during the holidays, and mashed potato you can have another time, then perfect. Skip the mashed potatoes and go with the pie. And then you do that until you find that 20% that you are comfortable eating and that it's going to be within that 20% of your indulgent things. The second one is don't skip meals. It can be tempting for us to be like, oh, well, I'm not going to have breakfast because I'm going to have a large dinner or a large meal. However, this can increase the risk of you feeling a little bit more hungry, and it can lead to overeating. So just make sure that you are eating regularly, just focusing on high protein, vegetables, things that are filling. Then whenever you're going to have like that heavier meal, then you can do the 80-20 rule of having the 80% of healthy things and then the 20% of the more indulgent things. The other one is making sure that you stay hydrated. Sometimes we confuse the feeling of hunger with dehydration. So just make sure that you're drinking plenty of water. And alcohol is not the best. It has empty calories, so if you can avoid it, then perfect. If you are going to include alcohol, just make sure that you are staying properly hydrated. Alcohol dehydrates, so one thing that can generally help is making sure that for every glass of alcohol that you have, make sure that you have a glass of water before and after. Not only is this going to help you stay hydrated, but it's also going to help you um, feel fuller, and that way you may probably reduce the amount of alcohol that you're going to have. And the other one is practice mindful eating. Just make sure that whenever you are eating, you are sitting down, you put things on your plate. Whenever it's the holiday season, it's very common for you to be all around, just snacking and eating. Just make sure that whenever you're going to eat, sit down, have a plate, eat, and then you can do the rest of the social activities, just focusing that particular moment on the food, how it tastes, how it feels, um, how how describe it like you are a food critic. That's one of the best things that I say. The more information or the more detail that you can provide to the meal, the more you can connect to that particular meal, and the more satisfying it will be. So, since alcohol is one of the biggest things that might happen during the holidays, I decided to put up a little comparison chart. If you are going to drink again, if you can avoid it, then perfect. If not, there are some drinks that are going to be a little bit better than others. Try to stay away from cocktail, sugary drinks, or anything that has a lot of alcohol in it, or different types of alcohol. This is only going to increase the calorie intake, and it's not going to provide the best type of calories. So if you're going to drink, try to drink the alcohol with something that is not going to be very high in calories. So for example, vodka with water, vodka with ice, vodka with a low sugar or a calorie free drink. And if you can opt for a light beer, it's always going to be better than a regular beer. White wine, and either white or red wine is going to be a very good choice. Go for the drier ones since they tend to be lower in sugars. And yeah, avoid having like things like with vodka with Coke. Try to go with the diet version, and always try to pair it with something that is going to be low in calories. Moving on, the other one is making sure that you stay active, but don't think as the exercise as a way to compensate what you're going to eat. Oh, I'm going to go out for a run because I'm going to have the pie. Make sure that you don't have like that negative association. Stay active because your body's not going to take, it's not going to go on vacations. A lot of people say, oh, well, it's December. I'm going to take a rest from training because, well, it's December. Your body's not going to feel the same way. It doesn't know that it is December and it's going to be the holidays. Make sure that you're staying active for your health and not for any other reason, not as a mechanism for burning calories. Just make sure that you are staying active, just because also during the holidays there's also a lot of stress, and exercise can reduce that stress. So just make sure that you're spending a little time being active. The other one is make sure that you do non-food focused activities. A lot of the holidays are food focused. So we often sit down and eat, and that's basically like the family activity that we have. Make sure that you're trying to strive for other things that are not food focused. So for example, Instead of the main event being the dinner, it can be putting out the Christmas tree or going out to for a walk or something that is going to help you connect with your family, that it's not necessarily going to be food the main reason for you to be connected. The other one is limiting liquid calories, like I said, with the alcohol. Remember that liquid calories also don't come from alcohol. It can also come from sodas, smoothies, milkshakes, all of those liquid things that they're not going to provide anything else rather than just calories, and it's not going to provide nutrients or anything else. And the other one is make sure that you plan ahead. So if you can plan ahead, you can more or less make the adjustments during the day. So for example, if you know that you're going to have dinner, maybe having like lighter meals. Remember, don't skip them, but maybe focusing more protein, vegetables first, a little bit of healthy carbs, and then for you to have like the heartier meal at dinner time. If you're going to have maybe at lunch, have a lighter breakfast and dinner, and if not, if the breakfast is the main thing, then you can have the rest of the days a little bit lighter. Just make sure that you try to plan ahead as much as possible. If you know that you are going, you know what you're going to have, where you are going. And if you don't know what you're going to have where you are going, remember that you can always take something with you. So you can always take something that is going to be high in protein, high in vegetables, like some vegetable skewers or a dip with made with like maybe Greek yogurt and vegetable sticks, so that you know that in case that there's nothing else that you like, or that you know that maybe your body doesn't react that well, you at least have something that is going to be a little bit better for you. The other one is setting realistic expectations, like we talked about, just making sure that you take a step back and that you determine if you really want to lose weight during the holidays, if you want to maintain, or if you're going to allow yourself for 1 or 2 pounds up. Just make sure that you always write it down and that you are always thinking what you're going to be working on. The other one is plan your holiday reset after the holidays. A lot of people are like, well, I'll eventually do it, but just try to set a date. So, for example, if you know that I don't know, the 31st is going to be your last dinner, that first, you already have your action plan to be like, okay, the first, I think it's Wednesday or Thursday, I don't remember. But if it's Wednesday, okay, on Wednesday, I'm already going to go swimming. I'm going to do this for my meals, but already have a plan instead of just letting it flow, because that's when we're like, oh, it's already the 17th of December, because it just kept going and going and going, and you didn't really plan and you just kept doing the same holiday things. Make sure that you're having enough sleep. Remember that poor sleep can lead to more cravings, and it can also make you feel more stressed if you're not having a good sleep. And if you're having more stress, it can also lead to more cravings. So just make sure that you're taking some time for you to have some rest. 7 to 9 hours is what it's normally recommended. And find stress managing techniques. I know the holidays can be very stressful with a family coming over or planning or all of the things that you need to do. Make sure that you're taking the time for you to learn what is the best stress managing technique for you. It can be from coloring, art therapy, to just doing puzzles, something that helps you ground yourself. It can be different for everyone. So I always recommend for you to try different things or and different strategies to find the thing that appeals to you the most and helps you decrease those stress levels. Any questions?
Manur, I have a question for you. Just one. I'm worried because many times when I got very stressed, I feel like anxiety. But when especially in my breath, so I call in your presentation call my attention the phrase called like mindful breathing. Could you provide me like a one technique for me about what does mean in those cases?
Yeah, okay, sure. So one of the very common techniques that we utilize is called square breathing method. So just like a square has four sides, this has four parts. So first, you are going to inhale through your nose for a count of four. Okay, can you remember for a count of four?
Okay, okay.
You have to hold that breath for a count of four, and then you exhale it through your mouth for a count of four, and then you take a pause for a count of four, and then
Oh,
continue that cycle until you feel calm. Okay.
okay.
This is a very common method. It's called square breathing method. If you need like a video or something, you are going to find one on YouTube.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
No problem. So let's talk about some common triggers. What kind of triggers do you guys experience?
Okay.
Okay, start with Brenda.
Common triggers that I experience.
Yes.
Um, oof. Um, for me, a common trigger. Maybe it's something that I've already worked on, but when it stresses me whenever people know that I'm a registered dietitian. Again, thankfully, my inner circle has already dealt with that, but they're always judgmental. Like, oh, the registered dietitian eating cake. Oh, oh, you probably don't want this because you, and that triggers me, and that really angers me. But it's just a matter, like you said, just talking with people and just being like, yeah, I may be a registered dietitian here. I'm not. So, right.
Okay, that's great that you've already dealt with it. So please let's continue. Let's share. What do you guys feel?
Hi, Renita.
Hello.
Anyone else who has identified triggers during the holidays?
I can go. I don't know if I haven't identified them as far as specifically to the holidays, but a trigger is just when others are eating and I'm not hungry, but I feel left out that I'm not eating or having something while they're having it. So what I've been finding myself doing is popping sugar-free gum in my mouth. So now my mouth is in motion like everybody else's, but it's not causing me to have these unwanted calories and things like that.
Yeah, that's good. That's impressive. Because that really happens. We all feel a sense of FOMO. So that can really happen. And, having a gum is a nice idea. You can also remind yourself that I've already eaten, or I'm not hungry right now, or I can eat later maybe. So this also works.
And for those who haven't identified their triggers, then you have homework. Now that it's the holidays, it's going to be a great opportunity for you to start writing down what triggers you. And again, so that you can compare yourself with the 2025 you, and that now you can know what triggers you and what you're going to do better next holidays. Any other question anyone else has? Okay, perfect. Manur, anything else, or are we good?
Yeah, I think we're good.
Perfect. Thanks everyone for joining us. I hope guys have great holidays, and we'll see you guys next month.
Happy
Thank
holidays,
you.
everyone.
Thank you, Manor.
Bye.
Thank you, Brenda. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.